recording has started, so if you're gonna speak, it's gonna be on the video. Alright, so before I start talking, I wanna give out some disclaimers that I usually give out when I do a training like this. So, as with everything in the game, there's an endless amount of nuance and exceptions to every single rule. The purpose of this specific training isn't to say like for me to say like do exactly as I say and you'll be a good player, but instead to provide a framework in which you can expand on with your own knowledge in your journey to be a better player. And you might be asking why should I listen to this random YK merc if you check my tags. Some of you have seen me working for YK from time to time, and there's some people here that I've never met. So I'm going to introduce myself. And here's my numbers page. None of these numbers matter. Just don't give a shit about them. As you can see here from the list of clans I was in, here's to make it bigger. You can see about, what is this? About 3 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago, I started. Holy shit, it's almost 4 years ago. Essentially, when I joined KIA-T here about 4 years ago, is when I started to play this game competitively, and this is the kind in which I would is in the most similar position to YK. Like we were struggling to get into Typhoon, and like our goal was to just reach Typhoon by the end of the season. And you can see here from September of 2020, it took me about, what is that, June of 21, so about what, say 9 or so months to get into Hurricane Clan. So that was my journey. I joined Epoxy in 21. At the time they were called QQ7. After that I left to join Yolo-K, which at the time was Yolo-W, and which I was like, I spent like a week there, and then the Kraken merger happened, in which I spent about a little less than 2 years in Kraken. In Kraken I was deputy commander for about a year, I think a little less than a year, and I was actually one of the people that helped make YK become a thing. But once Luke decided to take over, I kind of went hands off. So I'm really proud of what Luke did. I think YK is like one of the best environments for a clan to have that I've ever seen. And after that, I almost immediately joined KSC, and I played for KSC for about 7 months before I left, and now I'm pretty much homeless. So I'm not just like,
welcome to OFOC.
yeah, I'm not just some hobo they picked up off the street to make this training. I like to think that I have at least some idea of what I'm talking about. So let's start with the training. I'm going to start this off with a pretty simple question, and that question is, what makes a good player? This isn't a trick question. Yell them out or type out in the training chat. I don't care. I have it up on the other screen. So what do you think makes a good player? Like off the top of your head.
The ability to take information on the battlefield and translate that into strong, effective plays.
Okay, more general than that. Like what do you like when you see a player? Immediately that comes out and tells you like that guy's a good player.
Knows how to get out of a bad situation.
Knows how to get bad. Yeah, it's
Battle comms.
battle comms.
Win rate and PR basically is the default for most people looking.
Yeah, win rate.
Teamwork.
PR.
They
yep.
punish mistakes.
Map awareness.
Even more generally, like angling, knowing how to angle in position.
I feel like these are all very specific things, but yeah, usually what people go first to is stats, and my question is always like, okay, exactly like which number threshold do you become a good player? And most people know stats are pretty arbitrary, and like they give you a general guidance, but there's other possibilities, like people look at clan tags with at the color of the clan tag, and whether it's like typhoon or what, or hurricane, the clan bell achievements, the little icons you get when you get into typhoon or hurricane. There are some people that reference number of battles, which I don't know why. That there's players out there that have like 20,000 battles, and and they haven't improved since their 5,000th battle. Which this is like the most extremely arbitrary things. It doesn't really mean anything. The only thing that this says is like that you're really experienced in clicking the battle button like 20,000 times. The other stuff is like how many ships you have in port. Some people brag about that, or how many times you get it. There's a lot of weird things that people talk about, but and all the points that you guys came up with is like, I'd say like specific characteristics of what makes a good player, but I wouldn't like look at oh my god, this guy knows how to angle, he must be a good player. And I think the definition for me that covers the most bases and has the most covers the most context to what makes a good player, in my opinion, is autonomy. And this is how much your team or your caller can depend on you to play your ship without direction or guidance. And the only reason someone will not try to micromanage you is if they believe you know what you're doing. And if you know what you're doing, you're a good player in my book. This is also how I tend to measure myself. Those of you who were playing with me while I worked for YKK would often see the caller in YK just tell me to go to a position or even just go to a flank and like go do whatever you want. And the reason is pretty obvious. I know what to do to win the game. If they have one less player that they need to pay attention to, the easier the caller's job is. In KSC, on the other hand, I'm just like one of them. I probably rank like maybe a little above average in KSC. So how good you are changes as you move from clan to clan. It's context dependent. That is to say, my argument is that autonomy covers the most amount of context. This leads us to the purpose of the training, which is to give you a foundational knowledge to start thinking about how you can be an autonomous player, and by extension, a good player. So we'll start with calling structure. In KSC, which is at the height of competitive gameplay, they do what I call the no caller system. And or you could say like seven callers, but no caller system sounds better. There is technically a strat maker, but he or she is almost never considered a leader or a caller of some sort, because as soon as they're in battle, they're just one of the 7 players and part of the team. It doesn't make them any different. In the initial stages of this, we're trying to coordinate. In the initial stages of a battle, we're trying to coordinate and achieve predetermined goals of our positions. And when the conditions on the map make whatever the strat was no longer viable, and they almost always do, usually one of the players will give us a suggestion. And there's a quick consensus that needs to be reached in the team as to whether the suggestion is a good idea or not. And since it's the entire team will have to change what they are doing to follow the new strat, everyone needs to like give in their opinion. And usually it's like, hey, if it's something bad, one person will just call out, hey, this can't work because of this, and all right, but forget about it. And it's a really quick thing that happens. This usually happens in about 5 to 10 seconds. Like a problem occurs, we need to change the strat, and then someone makes a suggestion, and then the team agrees on a suggestion. That all this takes 5 to 10 seconds. It's very quick. But here's what happens. For example, if say a squall clan tries to do a no-caller structure, what you're going to get is 3 players at once will make 3 bad suggestions, and the entire team is going to have a 5-minute argument as to which of the 3 bad suggestions is a good one. And by the time they make a decision, they will have lost. Which is why this requires high skill from every single member. Even one weak link can ruin the entire thing. The good thing is that this system, in my opinion, is the system that most incentivizes every single member to learn. Which is something that can't be said for what most other clans run, which is what I like to call harem system, because there's the one top guy, and then there's the 6 bottom bitches that do what they're told. And the reason is obvious, because in almost every other clan, there's one caller so that they can be decisive. He makes all the decisions and is immediate. There's no arguments. You don't have to go into running into a problem of being indecisive and then losing, not because you made a bad play, but because you made no plays. There's no skill requirements. Like any 7 monkeys or with one at least a decently smart monkey can just can perform this caller structure. But the bad thing is that, in my opinion, this system hampers learning for everyone but the caller. And let's talk about why. Most of this training is going to be explaining why this system doesn't work to learn the game, and why this system does. So, what advice do you always hear about learning? Like whether it's well, yeah, whether it's in the game or whether it's even in real life.
Get
Yeah,
good.
just
Practice.
comically large amounts of practice. Yeah.
Practice.
Just make
yeah.
mistakes.
Just make mistakes. Think about them. Yeah, learn from mistakes. Yeah. These are just random shit I thought of. Usually what I hear. And these are all good. Like, don't get me wrong. These are all correct, right? The what you don't often hear are that I always think about are two things, and two things that I'm going to be talking about. These 2 things you don't often hear because they are completely antithetical to how the harem system works, right? So one of those 2 things is what I call initiative, and rather simply, if you don't do it, you don't learn from it. And fuck. This has to come from from all the way from the planning to the execution. What I'm talking about is you not only need to do it yourself, but to start the process from planning on what you're going to do, and then executing what you were planning on. It's not always simply the best to observe this, because if you're not doing it yourself, if you're just watching someone else do it, it's not as impactful. There's a limitation to how much you can learn by just through observation or video guides, which is why people go through watch hours of guides from some YouTuber, but they still suck at the game because they're trying to mimic others rather than doing it based on what they know, growing their own skill set. And this is something that kind of comes from left field. Expect more from yourself. This is usually what I do to benchmark myself, I suppose. And complacency is what killed the cat, and it will kill you too. I don't mean like you gotta carry every game to victory. More so, you have to always be thinking about what you should have done that have resulted in a better outcome, even when things work out or when you have victories. So if you played with me in YK, you know that I sound like I have a massive stick up my ass, because even when we win, I'm pointing out mistakes that the team or I myself did. Next is responsibility, which is pretty straightforward. I don't think I've ever seen someone, whether it's in real life or someone who learned from their someone who learned from their mistake by not taking responsibility. Acknowledgement is a core part of learning, and this, by the way, is one of the top aspects of what KSC recruiters look for when they're testing out players. If we see players bitching or making excuses for their own shortcomings, that's going to be a very quick denial. The other thing about responsibility is you have to shrug it off when someone tries to take responsibility for you. This usually happens when a caller is trying to be nice and they're trying to raise morale by saying, it's fine, it's my fault, it's my bad guys. By shifting all the responsibility to the caller, it gives the rest of the team to reason think, oh, it was the caller's fault, so I don't need to think about what happened there. You are as much as part of the team as your caller is, and if you want to get better at the game, you need to take responsibility. And I would go further to suggest not only for your actions, but for the shortcomings of the entire team, and not like this guy on the other flank, 8 torps. Oh no, that's my fault. More so like if the team lost because your caller didn't see an opportunity to make a better play, you should also be asking yourself why you didn't see that opportunity. So let's apply this to the caller structure. In the no caller system, every player always needs to be making their own initiative, not just in how they play their own ship, but also in how the strat of the team should change. So we're always thinking on two different levels, on what the team should be doing and what I should be doing. Every player is thinking about how to win the game with their team, and when there's a strategy mishap that loses the game, every player takes responsibility because it's everyone's fault that no one came up with a strat to win the game. Individual mistakes are different, but they're usually just openly talked about and welcomed by the person who made the mistake, right? In the harem system, on the other hand, because there's one dude who makes all the big decisions, they have to, by virtue of being the caller, take all the responsibility, and this often leads to the rest of the team becoming complacent about improving themselves, while the only person taking responsibility continues to grow because of it. It's for the same reason that the team is encouraged and conditioned not to take any initiatives or make their own plays, because everyone is waiting for the orders and the caller to call their plays for them. Without responsibility and initiative, everyone but the team caller will just fall into stagnation. Obviously, this didn't happen to me. I was also once a bomb bitch when I was like in KWA, but essentially, I always kept trying to do my own shit. I wouldn't follow orders if I think it's a useless play or it'll get me killed. I kept telling the caller what I think should be done. I kept making my own plays, which in those early days, like I wasn't a good player, which usually ended up me getting slapped or dev struck. I was almost always the one making all the mistakes, and that's how I kept learning. While everyone was in the stagnation stage of just looking at the caller. But I don't recommend doing this. Being a bad ball and bitch. Like if you try to be a bad ball and bitch, everyone will fucking hate you, right? And some will try to get you removed from the clan, and which has happened to me. So don't do what I did. Instead, this is why I was requesting an officer from each of the clan to be here, and this is my suggestion as to how to encourage learning in a harem system, while not making it necessary for players to be bad ball and bitches to learn how to play the game, right? So there's there doesn't need to be like just a dynamic between, it's either like one extreme end of the spectrum to the other. There are mixed systems, and they come in like many different forms. These are just two that I could think of off the top of my head because it's things that I've experienced myself. A duo system, it's this is something that K did for a while. I think for like a season or two. I don't remember why it got dropped. Essentially, you have two players that are linked together, and they work together to accomplish a goal that was set out for them by the caller. And encourages initiative in a more easier way where they're not where they don't have to think about the entire team, but they just have to think about how to work together with the other ship that they're grouped up with. So it's a more a micro scale autonomy that's happening there while it's still being relatively in control by a caller, or a semi-auto scale, which is what K usually runs, or at least tries to run, where you have a caller that calls out the main objectives of the match, and the caller would usually also give out initial positions, and from there each of the players are left to their own devices as to how to achieve the goals of that they're given on their own. You don't have to implement specifically these two things. You can talk amongst yourself as to what kind of mixed system to come up with that serves your clan the best. But I would say any kind of mixed system is better than a harem system, which is what I usually see. And I see the problems of this happening live as I'm playing with YK. There's players that don't that pass by mistakes because they're like, this was the caller's fault for not calling this. I don't care about it. There's people that don't know what they're doing because they weren't given directions, and that's, in my opinion, that's mainly because of the system where there's one caller that has to do everything. That leads us to what I call the vicious ladder, and this is essentially just the logical way of how I think about getting good at the game. Being good at the game, to me, as I said, requires autonomy, and we've talked about, the rest of the presentation was about this. And autonomy requires you to know how to win the game. If you don't know how to win the game, you don't know what to do, right? And if you don't know what to do, you're not autonomous. So to know how to win the game, you need to know strategy. How strategy work in this game. So I know there's a lot of people that think that there's a great divide between strategy and playing the game. There isn't. It's one and the same. If you don't know strategy, you're not a good player. So the rest of the presentation is going to be about how strategy works in this game. There are 3 different kinds of strats that most clans use, even if they don't know that they use it. And essentially, these are imagine them as rock, paper, scissors type of thing. It's been this way, I think, since the game started. And the first kind is what's called control strategies. Control strategies, as the name implies, focuses on taking and controlling caps. This requires a lot of radar ships to ensure that the cap is free of these. This is also the easiest and usually the kind of strategy that you see most clans run, because it's naturally a defensive strategy, and that defensive strategies by nature are just easier to do. It's very safe because of its defensive nature. This usually turns into a kill strat, if it fails to control the caps, because you when you're in the desperation mode, you're essentially trying to get any kind of advantage that you can, making desperate plays. Kill strats are, as the name implies, essentially the goal is to win by killing first, to take the first advantage. This usually you see high DPM, high HP, fully focused ships, so that they can trade better and make out or pick out kills as fast as possible, and securing a kill. This is relatively harder than the control strat, because, well, just with the nature that if you're going up against a team that's about as equally skilled as you, it's a lot harder to pick off a ship. And it often turns into a control strat if you achieve your objective of killing, because then after you have the advantage, numbers advantage, you can safely turn into a control strat, because the defensive position works a lot more better for you when you have the advantage. The last one is a maneuver strat, and this strat you can win however you want, because this strat is dependent on speed, and there's really only one kind of ship that you want for this, and that's fast gunboats, like the Marceau, Kleber, shit like Khabarovsk, if the Marceaus and Klebers are fucking banned. But it's very difficult to do, because you not only have to think on the spot how to win the game, because you're essentially taking the initiative. You're gonna always be the first to spot your enemy team, and then you have to immediately decide how you're going to win the game depending on what you see from the enemy team, and then you're able to switch and take whatever position that you want, and you're essentially controlling the entire game, right? Because you can be anywhere essentially, while your opponent can't. And by playing with positioning, you can win either by controlling caps or killing your teammates, depending on what your opponent does. And if you're going up against equally skilled players, maneuver strats will always win. There's no doubt about this, and it's very obvious. Like, every time in a season where they don't ban fucking Marceaus and Klebers, this shit is always up there in Hurricane. And the higher you go up in the clan battles, up in the rankings, the more maneuver shit you see. This is, of course, almost always gets ban hammered. Like, every season, there's limitations or even just straight out bans of the ships that are required to run this, which is how Ouija likes to balance the different kinds of strategies by nerfing maneuver by simply just limiting the ships that you can have, which is essentially the only reason why controlling kill strats have any chance in Hurricane. So, considerations to have in a strategy. As we talked about, bans and limitations is the biggest one. The gunboats for maneuvers, 457s have to be taken into consideration. Cockroaches like Napoli, San Martin, they take into consideration as to how tanky a flank can be, which opens up or closes possibilities as to how you want a kill strat or a cap strat to play out. How many radars, especially 12-kilometer radars, are banned. CVs, we haven't seen CVs in like 2 years, I think. But they can still be a consideration if they do ever get allowed again. Maps, of course, how big or small they are, how the caps are oriented, how safe they are as to like what islands are around them and how they're shaped, how far apart the caps are to each other. The meta, of course. The meta is like, you can either see how things are turning out now, because the top teams know what the usual strats look like, and they see the bans and limitations, they see the maps, and they're like, oh, this season the control strats have a lot of advantage, so they're gonna play a lot of control strats. And if you see a lot of control strat plays, there are rare moments where a clan goes, hey, there's this strat that everyone's fucking playing. If we play this specific thing that specifically counters that strat, even though it would like probably lose against a more generic one, you might risk playing it, and it might like get you a lot of results even though it's not playing to the meta. But there are some cases in which the meta is quite literally unbeatable, like that fucking meme team season where there was just Puerto Ricos everywhere, because they're just, it's so absurdly one-sided. It's not always possible to go counter meta. But yeah, being on top of these things to consider what kind of strat will work best is what will get you to be able to stay on top of the meta and know what to expect. Yeah, without saying tier of the clan battle season makes a difference, but like I'm not gonna sit here and go through every single fucking tier of the possible clan battle seasons and what they're like. Like it's essentially the same as bans and limitations. Tiers change what kind of ships are available, and based on that, the how strong each of the strat types differ. So, here's practice time. This is a strat that someone came up with, where there's two BBs, either a Colombo or the two BB players have a choice between Colombo and Kremlin, and the other one has a choice between Borgona and Wisconsin. For cruisers, there's two Marseilles, a Moskva, and the kite side has choice between Napoli or San Martin. The DD is a choice between Radar Yuyang or Gdansk and the Lechmont Club. Based on this lineup, what do you think the strat type is? Control, kill, or... Well, I think it goes without saying it's not maneuver. Say kill? Why kill?
This is a control.
Given that it's was, I don't know, just a lot of tanky, out-survive the enemy kind of ships.
Outride the enemy kind of ships.
Yeah, given that it's a Marseille. Colombo or Kremlin, and
Borgona,
there's
Wisconsin.
the Yu Yang and Gdansk in the Kleber, but I don't know.
Alright, I heard control. Why did someone say control?
I think this is a control comp because you have the Legmod Kleb to be able to get a cap early. You have the Moskva to maintain position. You have one of the battleships of the Marseilles to push the edge around a contest cap, and then you have the radar DD to either sit on flank and contest off cap, or to play with your contest side and keep the enemy DD off of the cap after your Kleb is captured.
I love it. Almost everything was correct. Yeah, I like how you kept saying contest, because yeah, this is contesting everything. So it is very much a control strat, but it's edging towards a kill strat, because this isn't usually a control strat is defensive, but this is what you would call like an offensive variation of a control strat, where instead of like trying to sneak up to a cap and take it by contesting it, you're literally hard pushing into a cap, taking space with the Marseilles, to ensure that you grab it and still leave yourself with enough speed to be adaptable to the situation. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna look at some. So these are not my strats. These are actual KSC strats for one of the previous seasons. I don't remember fucking which season it was, but it doesn't matter. I want you guys to look at this strat lineup and give me what you think the objective of the entire strat is. Like, how did the strat maker here think the game is going to be playing out to win the game? And imagine that, like, for the sake of argument, that you're the green team. I'll give like.
It's definitely a control strat on the kite side, or not meant to say at the contest cap, and you got a kill strat on the home cap side.
So.
It's pushing on the weak side.
Yeah. No, it's a push on the home cap, and you have
Yeah.
a
With the two Marseilles, yeah.
kite side on the contest cap, or more
Yeah.
like a control.
Definitely. So, what's like think end game. What do you think the end game, what the strat maker was thinking the end game will look like?
So if the double cap side is weak on the defense, you're going to push the Napoli, Gdansk, and probably the Berg into the middle or to defend the home cap. And the idea would be to hold the two caps, the double cap side, if they're weak on that side. If they're not, then you're going to basically, you have enough boats there to defend a hard push around that side, and you've got the Gdansk, which you're not going to get out, the Napoli you're not going to get out, and the Bourgogne and Whiskey, which can push back around and cover the contest cap.
Right. So, essentially, you kind of think of like a, what do you call it? A zigzag kind of type of thing where there's a focus on here, and then you go back with the kite side. So it's good that like, yeah. So this the exercise is to get you guys thinking about, you know, how to look at a lineup and see what's going on in the mind of the strat maker. Because in KSC, essentially this is the only thing we're given. We don't most of us don't even fucking talk to the strat maker. We get a map, we get the ships, and we're expected to know just from this the purpose of every single ship here, what their entire game plan is, the purpose of what you're supposed to do when you get there, what you're not supposed to do, and you know the goal of the strat, everything comes from this map. And for this specific one, obviously everyone, it's easy to point out, yeah, there's two Marseilles and a Legmont Club that they're designed to push through. The end and yeah, of course these are supposed to kite. The end game for this as a control strat, this entire thing, a control strat, and the end game is to control the two, their home cap. And these things, the Marseilles, because of their speed and their tankiness, they're meant to take space all the way, take this entire space so that they can cover this cap. The end goal is essentially to flip the map or sideways so that this entire half of the map is controlled by your team, while the opponents only control the other side. And the opponents, because of how the map is seen with the islands here, they only have few avenues to go through to attack. So it's very predictable what they can do with just RPF. And that's the entire point. So if obviously if something doesn't work out, the kite side might go back in, but the initial idea is to hold the right side of the map and end the game by winning on these two caps. These are just like essentially distractions that shouldn't be able to die. Let's go to another one. It's look about shards. Let's think about green team again. You have two Marseilles on the bottom here, a Colombo or Kremlin. You club early cap on A, Moscow stuck on B. Obviously kite side on C side, Bourgogne around the kite side. What does the end game look like?
The end game is controlling A and B with the Marseilles collapsing on the wide flank. You control the bottom right corner of the, or bottom left corner of the map. You draw a line basically. With that, the Moskva is there to control with radar. The Legmont Club is there for free caps. And you can just shove two Marseilles and a Colombo into Bourgogne and Kremlin, force them to play unsafe against a Legmont Club Air.
Oh, it's yeah, short thing. The red team is basically just like the second strat if that they could run. This is not supposed to like be an enemy team. The enemy team could be fucking anything, right? But yeah, essentially Marseille's push around. Always be thinking about flipping them out and the contesting B at the end. And when you think about in like one of the best ways to get yourself to think about what your objective is, what you should be doing is to always simplify the game. And how you do that is by doing what we were just doing. Think about how to win the game in the simplest ways possible. Like, go back to the basics, right? We're doing a control strat. Can we still win on a control strat? And if so, how? By simplifying the game, you narrow down the things that you should do in a clear manner. And from there, you can get an idea of how to do things on your own. And it's a key part in trying to be an autonomous player. A lot of ways that I hear or like see people what they do, and when they like get to a position and they don't know what to do, is because they're overcomplicating the situation for themselves. So always be thinking about the map. And I think that's enough. We got the point. Let's talk about how I play. Usually, my eyes are glued to the minimap 80 to 90% of the game. I really only take my eyes off into the main screen if I'm in like an active engagement that I need to win, and even then I'm looking at the minimap between firing my shots and dodging opponent's shots. I'm also using a mod that shows me like each specific HP, the player's HP of each team's. I know there's a mod that like shows total HP of each team, but I've never found how that could ever be useful. So if I'm not like looking at that, I'm usually looking at the map, and I'm always thinking about what I should do on that map. I'm always like in my mind drawing like all the things that I could be doing, and how that can win the game. So always have the goal of the strat in mind. What we talked about: kill, control, and whether that strat needs to be changed, whether it's still achievable. If it's not achievable, a lot of games are lost because players or the caller does not recognize when controlling is no longer a feasible option, where something needs to be forced to happen to win the game. And usually that's like try go fishing for a kill, or doing a massive reshift of usually DDs to early enough so that you can hamper an opponent's push or something. And yeah, while you're thinking about it, always there's like as I said before, there's two parallel thought processes that's always happening. While you're thinking about how the team can win, you should always be thinking about what you should be doing to support your team and support the strat that's currently going on. And essentially that's it. Any questions, comments, concerns? You can go ahead now.
This is more for implementation. So for YK specifically, how would you suggest going about starting to implement something like the everybody's a caller strategy? Because is that just sort of you have to know what your players are capable of for the caller or the strategist, or are you needing to do a lot more in-depth trainings like this where you're sitting down with your player base and making them do the trainings? Because unfortunately we are the training clan, and we don't have at the rip the best players that we can throw into any situation and expect them to make the most efficient decision possible.
So I think that's one thing that one of those things I forgot to mention that I initially planned to mention, but because I did this presentation literally today, I missed it. As you know, a training clan, a training clan, and it's fucking amazing that you are. I think it's an essential part of any community. But as a training clan, with you know the duty to grab players, no matter you know what kind of skill or position that they might be, it's often not often. It's never a good idea to go to a full no collar strat or no collar structure, because you're gonna get what I explained before. You're gonna get like situations where you get two bad suggestions and then there's an argument about you know which one of those are good, and and that's just too much shit. So essentially it's what I said before about the mixed systems, and that is the best thing that I have, where it's not a no caller strat. It's still very much so dependent on a main caller that's calling out like objectives. But to get to start getting into you know the mindset of being autonomous, this system works so that players can at least think about, instead of like you know how should my team win and thinking about how should I win, you should at least have them start thinking about you know how should I play my ship to win the game. And these kinds of and these mixed systems help with that, where you give a limited amount of autonomy to the players to play their own ship, but in the goal that specifically the caller sets out for.
Do you mind if I add one thing here?
Yeah.
This worked really well for me in YKO as a caller. Is I started to get better about describing my strategy as we were loading into the game. So saying which ships are doing what mission, what their goal is in terms of my overall strategy, and what the overall strategy of the team is. So when they go into the game, they kind of have a baseline of what they're meant to accomplish or what their goal is. So even if you're not giving them specific instructions, they can always revert back to that. And then the further they get away from the baseline instruction, I think that's when you have to start to do more in-depth sort of individual replays, like doing a replay directly after the game if someone went way against what you wanted them to do. But I think you can give people the baseline knowledge that you have as a caller and your baseline strategy, and then allow them to be a little autonomous within those bounds.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. That's kind of one of those. Oh, go ahead, Javelin. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think just from like a professional standpoint where I manage teams, I think what we can implement realistically in YK, because we will have a range of people, right? Some will need that harem system, kind of they expect to be told what to do, while others can operate on their own. I think like a hybrid system could work where you kind of keep players together as much as you can, which you know will create a little bit more overhead, but given specific assignment, like have a group of kite side players that play usually together kite side, and then put one of them or the whole unit in charge of this strategy on the kite side. You can still have a caller above it that kind of sets the overall tone and like this is what we want to do, but then each sub-unit you also give either a player autonomy if you feel like the other ones are not willing to take that autonomy themselves. You can put somebody like in between the caller and them, so they manage their group of kite side or push side players, and then still have like a conductor overall, you know, correcting the strategy, or if you need to flip the switch from control to kill, call that as well.
Yeah, and this also reminds me of some other thing. Oh shit! What was I thinking about? Semi-auto, the crap. I was listening to that person talking, and that left my mind.
And
Is there any other questions while I try to remember this?
Where you had the duo, there's situations where that work, but the risk you run with that when you have duos running, which is also called fire teaming, is when one member of the fire team goes down, the guy running the show, in this case the caller, has to quickly reassign roles to that solo member out there because his reason for being just changed. And it's that rapid shift to take that orphan and assign him to another fire team or assign him another objective that is where that starts to fall apart.
So
I agree with Johnny here. That's an experience I had running that kind of comp.
So the on the duel system, when one of the duels die, the other person, this essentially the same thing happens no matter what kind of system you're in. If the person that you're on a flank with and one person on your flank dies, that changes what your objectives, and it's no different on a duel system. It feels more impactful because you're supposed to be with this dude and he's gone now, but essentially the actions on each of the systems doesn't really change. In any system, the caller still has to, like, if this player dies, the caller still has to, like, reassign objectives to the flank because there's now a weakness where where the player died, and it's the same here, except for shuffling the entire. You don't need to reshuffle the entire, like, thing because one player died or not. You could stay with it. Like, if one player from each duo dies, you don't need to make a duo out of the other ones. It could just be 3 separate players, and the caller now still has technically 3 groups that he's calling for, right? This duo system is not just to improve the autonomy of the players by having them work together to achieve objectives. It's also to decrease the amount of things that the controller needs to think about, because essentially they're controlling 3 groups
about 3
with the same
parts
objectives.
instead of 7 parts.
What do you mean?
More. They're controlling 3 instead of 6 boats.
Yeah.
Basically.
And if one of them dies, they don't have to. They're not really thinking about oh my god. Like, obviously the objectives need to change, but they're not thinking about oh my god. I was controlling 2 players, now I'm controlling 1. No, it's still one group, and it's just a weaker group now.
One of the big benefits that I had to running this sort of semi-auto, by giving people the strategy up front and giving them sort of a rough outline of what I needed them to do, is that you will very quickly be able to tell which players need minimal oversight. There's always going to be some standout players that are going to be able to sort of execute a baseline plan. And as from the perspective of a caller, if I'm able to give everybody a little bit of rope, I get to see who can take that rope and run with it, and who needs to be kind of put on a little bit of a tighter leash. So you get to narrow down who you are giving more of your focus to in the match. And then you can allow the players that are kind of doing the baseline job well enough to continue to just do what they're doing with very minimal oversight from the caller. And you learn as the season goes on who you can rely on more and more in those positions.
You actually just reminded me of what I was thinking about. So what I was thinking about was changing from the harem strat to a semi-auto strat or any of the mixed systems. It's it's a very important thing for the caller to let your team make mistakes and have, like, bad plays run out on their own, and and have some of them, like, just make those mistakes and talk about it after the game. I
call it giving them rope. You got to give them some rope, and they're either gonna tie a knot or they're gonna hang themselves. But sometimes you got to let them hang themselves so you can learn those lessons.
Yeah, and I think what I usually see a lot of callers do a mistake is that they yell at their player when they see them making a mistake, so they panic, and they make even more mistakes. And instead of doing that, just essentially do what I do when I'm, like, working with YK. I constantly see mistakes fucking happening, but I don't talk shit about it until the game is over, because I'm just gonna let it play out, because they know. They have, like, when someone is making their own play, they have an idea in their head about how that play is going to turn out, and I want them to go through that entire thing and get to that end where they die, instead of going through that thing where everyone's yelling at them not do it, and then they die. Um, I, I want them to go through that thing with a clear head, so that after the game I can tell them what's wrong and they have a clear idea about what happened and not a memory of everyone screaming at them.
I think that the point there is that the screaming causes people to dig in and get distracted from learning what the real lesson was.
That too, it can make people defensive. That is a thing. Although, it can be an argument as to whether being defensive is a you problem or not. But yeah, that's that's one of the good things about just having them let them do this. And when you're switching to a semi-auto system or a mixed system, you're gonna see a huge increase in mistakes, and I think that's worth it on the long run of things, right? Because especially since people are not experienced in being autonomous, now they get switched to being expected to do that. A lot of people are not gonna be used to that, and it's gonna take some time to get used to it and to get a feel for how to avoid mistakes, instead of being told how not to avoid mistakes. And I think it's important as you see that increase in mistakes and losses rack up to look at the long-term goal, and that hope that it'll get better. And I do believe that it will get better as teams get used to it.
Yeah. So just I guess that answered. This was a long answer to the original question, so I appreciate it. Basically, it's a focus shift, and it's going to take time to implement, and you're going to have to work with your players individually once you implement the idea, so that they always learn from their mistakes rather than just go next. Is basically a summary.
Yeah. One thing I do see, like I often see in Kraken, and what I don't see, and in KSC, and I don't see enough in YK when I work with you guys, is that after a game, sometimes people just don't want to fucking talk about it, and they go next. You remind me of that. It's important to take a breather after each game, like even just a minute or two, even if it's a win, to talk about what could have been better. And
Yeah.
it's I guess it requires a bit of a
Less
shift.
mistakes, the further up you go, is always going to lead to better results, even on wins. So
Yeah. I think a lot of people
something
think
to always
like
consider.
by talking about mistakes, it's gonna make the mood sour in the room, and I do that all the time. I think it's important to make that a normal thing, so that it when everyone can feel free to bring up mistakes and what could have been done better, to make a culture where it's where you can have anyone just talk about it without thinking they're being Debbie Downers about shit.
Yeah. Well, my greatest thing that I've learned in just life experience is mistakes are your greatest tool for learning, because you can never really truly learn a lot from a success. Learning from mistakes, even during a success, will help you improve your ability to improve, just flat out. It's because you're taking that and you're not going to make that mistake again, thus you're going to improve the next time you have to do it twice.
Yep. All right. Is there anyone else with any questions, comments, concerns, jokes, criticisms?
You should come to a call for YK.
Opinions. Call for what? So here's the thing. I rarely ever called. Which I guess I don't know if I pointed this out in my presentation actually. You don't need to be a caller to be a good strat maker, or to understand strategy. Because I'm not a caller. I rarely ever call. I'm a terrible caller, and I have at least I like to think that I have a decent grasp on strategy. It's something, cause calling is like when I talk about like how you have two parallel thoughts about how the team should win, how the players should win, callers have like a third stream where they're thinking about how to articulate to the team what they're supposed
I
to do.
totally get what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Or they're thinking about, you know, what kind of plays are even possible with the ships that you have and the players that you have. So it's a different level of thinking, but you don't need to be that to get good at strat. You just understand from, you know, from the framework of these three things, and your experience in playing in clan battles, you know, how a game should play out and what the pain points are, identifying pain points of the game and what should be done with to fix those. Those are more specific conversations that like it's gonna take hours and hours to explain that I'm not gonna do now, but these are your starting points, just to be thinking about those. Anything else? FSO? I am disappointed in your lack of enthusiasm.
He's just so blown away.
Well, I mean, I am a little disappointed we did not mention the essentials for winning a game in general, which is the steel camo GL, but I guess that's probably a given.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that's for a later conversation about how to, you know, how to optimize. Yeah.
Advanced strat, how to attain win conditions and stuff like that.
Also,
always
we
have
all
steel
know
camo.
how the mini-map is a square. Interesting.
Oh yeah. A reminder. Where is this? Don't do this. Don't do this if you're rotating your mini map, or you're probably gonna end up puking or something. Like.
Oh, like freaking beer. I hate
Yeah,
watching
like
his
beer.
stream.
It sucks so bad.
Oh my god.
I don't know how he does it. I think his rotating mini map is speaks for itself when it comes to how he calls.
It's disgusting.
Like that mod has one user. It's beer.
Somebody
It's
else is
its
posting
favorite user.
screenshots with that. So
Were they?
confusing. Yeah.
It hurts your head, doesn't it?
Like what map is that? And then you go,
Like beer is a genius caller, but then you're like, oh my god, my brain can't follow.
By the way, one of the mini-map mods has health bars on the map as well, if you want to spend more time on the mini-map. I think it's the auto spy.
Auto-spy. Yep.
Auto spy.
You can have little circles around people with their HP.
I can't stay in that one though. It's just too much to stare at.
There's a lot of clutter at some point, yeah.
I have enough clutter on my mini map.
Askinir?
Yeah.
I have really been decluttering because of that.
How do you feel about going camping?
I love camping. I haven't done that in many years.
Outstanding. A recruiter will be in touch.
Man, when was the last time? That was, like 7 years ago?
Well, I promise you, if you go camping with us, you'll remember when it happened.
All right.
It'll be a. Thank you much.
Yes, I do. We really appreciate it. That was prime.
That was
Man. Love
fantastic.
some more.
That was
Yep.
cool. Thank you.
Oh shit! I forgot to stop the recording. Fuck.